afternoon, everybody. This is Steve, Monday Chief Forecaster with Rowan County Weather. Honored to be joined by my friend and colleague, Brad Panovich with NBC Charlotte. Brad, I appreciate you taking the time today to join us to talk about the tornadoes that impacted the area, but specifically the one that started out in Catawba County, made its way through Iredell County, and then finally lifted here in Rowan County on Monday night.
Yeah, it was a crazy day. I mean, honestly, in the 20 plus years I've been working here, this is by far the most damage reports I've seen in a single calendar day. Only one that was remotely close was back in 2011. That was a crazy month in April that year where we had a derecho move across the area and produce widespread damage. The hard part about this one, Steve, was that you had all of this widespread straight line wind damage. There was a swath, maybe about 25 miles wide, that started up in the mountains that had 70 to 80 mile per hour straight line winds. And then as the system came through Catawba County, we got a little vorticity spin up right in that leading edge. And that was really hard to discern after the fact between the straight line damage and the tornado damage. In fact, believe it or not, some of the straight line damage in Catawba County was actually stronger than the tornado itself. So there were spots where 80, 85 mile per hour straight line winds were next to tornado damage that was just 70 miles per hour. So it was a pretty wild day. And then to see that tornado was likely on the ground for 37 miles,
Right.
that's a pretty long trek for our area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the straight line winds. One of the questions that got a lot of, or even follow-up questions even today from a lot of folks is, okay, I see this tornado impacted just this small area in southern Rowan County, but I got damage at my house that I'm pretty sure was caused by a tornado. And I've been explaining for the last,
Yeah.
obviously 2 days, straight line winds can do the exact same damage. And
Yeah.
you really, you have to look at the way the trees are laying down and the different kinds of destruction to determine what was what. But everything outside of this area has been considered and consistently shown to show damage consistent with straight line winds.
Yeah. So today, and it's not to diminish that. That's the thing I
Right.
think you gotta be careful of. People think, oh, I had damage. It had to be a tornado. Just because it's straight line winds doesn't mean that diminishes the
Right.
damage. It's just as severe. And I posted earlier today about this. I went back and looked of the 200 damage reports from
Mhm.
GSP, which is the Weather Service office. Only 11 were contributed to a tornado. That means 95%, Steve, of the damage
Mhm.
reports were from straight line winds. And just to put that in perspective, Hurricane Hugo back in 1989, no one's going to forget that.
Yep.
Most widespread wind damage. I think 800,000 trees between the two states were blown down.
Right.
We lost power to millions for 2 weeks. That was a straight line wind event. So nobody's going to say, oh, that wasn't a big deal. No, straight line winds cause extensive damage. Your house, the tree, the power pole has a threshold to damage. It's usually
Mhm.
58 miles per hour, right? Once you get above that, it doesn't matter where that wind comes from. It just matters that that force was applied to the tree, the house, whatever. So I don't want people to think that it had to be a tornado. And it really is a good reminder why severe thunderstorm warnings are just as important to pay attention to as tornado warnings.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And it's kind of funny, Hurricane Hugo, there's two storms I hear about a lot
Yeah.
here, and I'm sure Hugo is one for you. The second one, just being here in Rowan County, is a hailstorm that came through the China Grove area back in the 80s that did like massive destruction.
Yeah.
Usually, when folks come to talk to me, they're talking about two things. It's either Hugo or that hailstorm. So it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. Brad, so you put together a plot map, or I guess
Yeah.
a survey map or a track map, if you will, on Google Maps the other night that you released, and I shared it here on Rowan County Weather. And I know a lot of other folks did as well in other areas. But I wanted you to kind of walk us through this tornado and the track it took as it started out on Monday.
Yeah, so the cool things about these interactive maps, I actually pulled the data directly from the surveys from the
Mm-hmm.
National Weather Service, and you can zoom in on the map and click on the damage points and see
Mm-hmm.
what the Weather Service was looking at. So you can see the whole process of how the survey and even pictures of some of the damage caused. So this storm initially started back near Conover, Claremont area, Newton area, in Catawba County. This is where it was difficult for the Weather Service to discern. There was a swath of 80 mile per hour wind damage around Conover, but then it looked like the tornado touched down just south of Claremont, and then it tracked east through eastern, Catawba County towards Sherrills Ford. It crossed over Lake Norman and then moved through the north side of Mooresville. If you know where the quarry at Kerrigan Farms is a great
Yes.
former. It passed just south of there, and then it continued east, and it got intense again as it kind of moved mainly over Landis, but just south of China Grove, kind of
Hmm.
split China Grove and Landis. But there was a lot of damage in both towns, right? And it
Right.
continued to push east, and it lifted east of I-85. But this is the other area that's hard, Steve, because in that same area, there was a huge swath of straight line wind damage
Yep.
in China Grove that was 80, 85 miles per hour. So if you're in those areas and you're like, oh, I'm north or south of the track, I must
Hmm.
have gotten hit by a tornado. No, it was embedded in a line that had really strong winds. Like I said, there was a 25-mile swath
Right.
from about Hickory all the way out towards Albemarle that produced 80-mile-per-hour winds. So, as a forecaster and as a meteorologist, I can imagine how hard it was to go out there and say, "Oh wow, look at all this damage." Well, this
Hmm.
tree was straight line, and it's difficult. It's hard. It's kind of
Absolutely.
like if you go back to the hurricane analogy. Hurricanes have strong winds, but sometimes in hurricanes there's embedded tornadoes, and
Yes.
surveying those damage paths are really hard because you're like, what is the hurricane damage and what is the tornado damage? So that's why it took so long, I think, yesterday and Monday for a lot of the surveys to get done.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll give you a great example when you're talking about how small this distance is. Here at my home, I live on Courier Grange Road. A lot of folks that follow know that. But I live a quarter of a mile from Highway 152. The storm, or the tornado, if you will, actually tracked just on the opposite side of Highway 152 from where I am, and was just over a quarter of a mile away from where I live in that track. Now, here at my house, we actually did get damage. I had, of all things, a deck box actually got picked up and thrown around and slammed on the ground, and it obliterated it. So I'm having to get a new deck box today, but minor compared to what other folks dealt with. And I actually, from experience with working with you over the years, I've learned to stow things away, tie things down, and all that. I actually had my grill tied down, and it was still
Yeah.
lifted up and slammed on my deck. So I've got to get a new grill. But again, minor things compared to what other folks dealt with. But just two houses down from me, the entire roof got ripped off the home.
Oh,
And then you get just past that, and that's where you see the tornado track going in between, where I live and the opposite side of 152.
yeah. And the way you go back to the surveys is, they look the area drones are great. Yeah, I know you have a drone
Yes.
one. They really make surveying the damage easier because all the trees are going to be broken the same. The difference
Hmm.
is which way are they laying. And a lot of folks think the twisting of the trees, hey, everything twists in the wind. If you ever seen a
Yes.
stop sign on a windy day, it sits there. All
Hmm.
vertical structures twist in any kind of wind. So the twisting has nothing to do with tornadoes. What you do is you look for, are the trees laying in a crisscross pattern? Are they all converging towards a line? Because when a tornado passes, it pulls the trees towards the center line of the track. So on one side, you might see the trees laying to the south, and on the other side, you might see them laying to the north. And then, in between those two trees, you likely had a tornado. Just because the trees are scattered about doesn't necessarily mean it was a tornado. It's all about the way they lay. And then you go back and look at the radar data and you try to take the data from the ground and the data from the radar and kind of
Hmm.
sync them up. And then that really helps kind of put two and two together and you get the tornado track. But it is stunning to see how much wind damage we really had across the area. And you spoke about the damage to your deck and your grill. I've learned the hard way too. I had a portable basketball hoop in my
Hmm.
driveway, and it probably had a couple 100 pounds of water in the base.
Right.
It fell and almost hit my wife's car. So I've learned
Oh man.
in previous storms, I lower the hoop and I secure things because the things in your yard that aren't really that dangerous, they get picked up in the wind and they get
Yes.
blown into doors or windows, and then they become dangerous. So flying debris is by far the biggest issue you face in these situations.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've been with you before, talking to kids at school and everything. And one of the important things you always share with these kids is if you, ride a bike, skateboard, whatever, grab that helmet and
Yep.
put it on if a tornado warning comes out. And just good examples of what we, have shared here already as to what could happen by anything getting picked up by the wind. One other thing, Brad, I wanted to talk to you about, and I really do appreciate your time today. I know you're busy kind of hopping around and then doing your normal activities as well with NBC Charlotte. But I did want to talk to you coming into the event. I had a lot of folks. I know you had a lot of folks. Saw Ginger Z had a lot of folks. You name it. If you were a forecaster or a meteorologist somewhere on the eastern seaboard, you had folks coming to you going, "My cell phone app says nothing's coming."
Yeah.
And I know we covered a lot of that with folks going, "Look, there's a lot of faults with these cell phone apps. Some are good, some are bad." You gave a really good analogy, though, talking about the cell phone app in general. I wondered if you'd just share that with us today.
Yeah, let's face it, I'm a tech guy too. I know we both love technology, and apps aren't going away. They
No,
are a great resource for day to day, just typical weather. The problem is people think that the data and the quality of the information there is the same from, let's say, from you or I. There's a
right,
big difference, right? There's a
right.
big difference between going to a fast food restaurant and going to a sit down 5-star dining, right?
Mhm.
It's all food, but the quality and the amount is much different. So with these apps, the thing you got to remember, there's certain days, sunny and 80 degrees, pretty much any app's going to do a pretty
Yep.
good job with that. But when you have high impact days, big rain, thunderstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, snow, the apps can't handle that. Not only can't they handle the data that's not really good, they also can't communicate the threats very well
Right.
because if you look at your icons on your typical app, a day with a pop-up storm looks exactly the same as the day you're going to have severe weather because it's just a thunderstorm icon with a
Mhm.
chance of rain. There's nothing in there telling you, hey, this could be 80, 90 mile per hour winds or 100-mile-an-hour winds or a tornado. So
Right.
I made the analogy, it's like I use apps for credit cards and for banking. Most people do, right? You pay your bills, you get your balance, it's all automated, it's super easy. But boy, if you lose your card or you have a fraudulent charge,
Mhm.
you want to get somebody on the phone and talk to a human being, right? And say, you need to fix this. So you got to think about that the same way with your weather apps. If it looks like there's going to be bad weather, don't rely on this. Talk to an actual local person. One of the great things about what you do in Rowan County, what I do, is you're really focused on the local community. You live there, you have skin in the game.
Mhm.
You know what the weather patterns are like in this area. This app is from a computer that is thousands of miles away that has no local experience or information.
Mhm.
So it's okay to use the weather apps. Just know it's a lower quality and a lower information than going to somebody who's local and knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Lastly, Brad, you and I obviously we've got a passion about weather. Clearly,
Yeah.
we've got a project you and I've been working together with for many years now. The First Warn Storm Spotter team
Oh,
at
yes.
NBC Charlotte. Um, I know we get a lot of great information from all those folks. Some of those folks will probably be watching this here today because I get a lot of those folks that follow me. They clearly follow you. And I did want to give them a shout out and then just really take a moment to explain to anyone that wants to be a storm spotter because I do get some very credible and great information from a lot of the followers I have here in Rowan County. I know you do as well for all 33 counties that you cover.
Yeah.
Even when you're talking about events in other states, you get some great information from folks there too. So,
Yeah.
just real quick about the Storm Spotter group we have.
Oh yeah, spotters are a vital part of the
Yeah.
whole warning process. I mean, I can point to an event earlier this year. We had a tornado that formed over Lake Norman, right?
Yes.
And the only way that the warning was issued and we knew about it was from people spotting it because it was not detectable on radar. So technology has flaws, right? Cameras and radars and satellites only see certain things. So the most vital piece of information we get and the best tools are from human beings, believe it or not. So people out in the field spotting what's happening and telling us what's going on, we can then warn people downstream. So spotters are great when they're trained and they know what they're looking at, and we don't get a lot of erroneous. Every scud cloud is not a tornado. Every
Yep.
shelf cloud is not some ominous tornado coming your
Right.
way. If we know what we're looking at, it can really help us communicate. And oftentimes people say, well, what good is it going to be if I tell you there's a tornado here? It's already on the ground. Well, you're helping the person downstream or one county over where that storm is going. You
Mhm.
can get people. And what we have found that people respond to pictures, videos, and other people much quicker than they do just a radar image or
Absolutely.
even me. Like a lot of people follow and listen to me, but here's the thing: I found if your neighbor shows a picture, you're more likely going to seek shelter than me telling you to go to shelter
Right.
because they're there and you're like, holy cow, there's actually something going on. I need to seek shelter. That's human nature. We tend to seek out confirmation of threats. One person saying it's not a big deal, but if 2 or 3 or 4 people are saying it, then people seek shelter. And so those spotters are a big part of that process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Brad, I certainly appreciate your time. For anybody that is, wanting to know about being a member of the First Warn Storm Team
Yeah.
Spotters, certainly reach out to Brad or myself. We'll be more than happy to get you connected with it. Primarily, it's on Facebook, but that doesn't mean you have to be on Facebook to give us information. We'll take it from Twitter, we'll take it from Threads, we'll take it from anywhere you want to give it to us,
Yeah.
because it is very important to us. Even if you have to comment on one of our posts on whatever social media platform, we're always there to take that information. Brad, again, I appreciate your time. I know you've got a lot going on. So, folks, if you want to see Brad, of course, tune in the NBC Charlotte. Brad is pretty much there every day of the week, at least the weekdays. And I know football season's coming up. Are you going to be back on Sundays as well, like you usually are with
Yeah,
Panthers?
it looks like we will. I'll be shifting to that Sunday through Thursday shift because of
Okay.
Sunday night football. It's actually going to be a big fall for us at NBC
Yes.
because we're going to have college football on every Saturday night because we've got the Big Ten
Big
now.
Ten. Yeah.
And so we'll have Saturday night college football and then we'll have Sunday night pro football. So the weekends are going to be chock full. And you know how sports are. That's the one live sporting event everyone kind of focuses on. And for a weather person, it makes you nervous because those are the events I don't want to cut in for bad
Yep.
weather because
Yeah.
it's one thing a show or even the news or Jeopardy,
Mhm.
that stuff's all recorded. You can watch it again. Live events, it's tough to redo. So let's hope, I'll knock on my desk here that we don't get severe weather
Right.
during any football games, but trust we'll still stream and we have other methods to get
Sure.
information out, which is great. We are big on streaming information. So if you follow me on social media or you have our app, we like to stream even when we're not on TV. So that's a great source. And it's nice because you can just take your phone out. This is basically your TV now, and you can
Yes.
watch us there. So it is really cool that we have so much more information and access information that we can get to people 24/7, and they don't have to necessarily tune into a TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's tough for you. Big Ten coming to NBC,
Yeah.
being a Buckeyes guy like you are, it's got to be
Yeah.
just heartbreaking, right?
It's cool. I get two games. I already know the Notre Dame game, obviously, because Notre Dame's already on
Yep.
NBC, but then the Michigan State game's already been designated for
Oh man.
NBC. So I'm guessing there'll probably be a couple more games. So that's kind
Sure.
of cool. It's kind of rare to be in Charlotte and be able to have my alma mater playing on TV here. It's going to be
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Brad, again, thank you so much for your time. And everyone, you can certainly, as Brad mentioned, check them out on NBC Charlotte. Check out the upcoming fall season. It's going to be great with football. The leaf forecast I know is coming shortly.
cool. I can't
Uh,
wait.
and then we're, just as crazy as it sounds, even though it's, we're still dealing with 90-degree days. We're just a couple of months away from those long range winter forecasts. So it's all
Not too
coming.
far away. Yeah, I always tell like I know a lot of people are releasing their winter forecast. I'm like, can we do the fall forecast first?
Yeah.
Like I don't like doing 2 seasons ahead of time. So yeah, probably the next week we'll probably do the fall foliage forecast, which is what
Yes.
everybody wants. And then once we get into the autumn, we can start looking. It's too early to get looking at the winter weather because a
I
lot
agree.
can happen. We still haven't gone through the heart of hurricane season yet, so a lot can happen between now and then.
Yeah, and you're talking about things that don't even remotely exist yet. I mean,
Yeah,
you're still
absolutely.
waiting on a lot of things to happen. So, well, Brad, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And as always, for everyone watching, thank you for following Rowan County weather and, of course, for watching NBC Charlotte.